thank you so much for turning up to our kind of like what we're doing at the moment is a few of these kind of like lunch and learns. And I understand that like we are kind of in the depths of Q4 now, even though it doesn't seem like we're in the true trenches yet of November. We're kind of like in that planning period. So I really appreciate people showing up today and kind of like having a listen to what we've got to say. We push on. So for people who know us, we're push on. People that don't know us, we're push on. We're an e-commerce agency based in Manchester and Edinburgh. Adobe partners, and we specialize in e-commerce right through from build through to strategy, and the marketing piece, full service. So with these like lunch and learns that we're doing, we're basically kind of bringing on partners and bringing on people who are specifically in industries that we work with and work closely with, and just using it as a bit of an opportunity to kind of get an understanding of what big businesses are doing, mid-tier businesses are doing, and small businesses are doing to kind of maximize their growth and maximize their strategy, and kind of how we work alongside them. So we've got Will today, who's a Senior Partnerships Manager at MailChimp. We've got a really good relationship with MailChimp. We've done quite a few events with MailChimp as well. Back in January was the last big one that we did, where I was speaking with them about AI, and it's a platform that we use with a lot of our clients as well, and it's a platform that we know is really strong. So I'll let kind of Will intro himself and go through his bits, but we're going to kind of keep this interactive between myself and him as well. He's going to touch on his bit, and then I'm going to try and present some of the real life examples that we're working with. So over to you, Will.
Great stuff. And yeah, thanks again for having me, Alex, and the Push On guys. It's always nice to be invited back. So appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak on your lunch and learns. So today we're going to be talking about MailChimp's newly launched How to Grow Your Brand report. That covers some evergreen marketing strategies that mid-market companies like you guys might be able to implement in order to grow your business longer term. So the report's super interesting. It's made up of contributions from market leading thought leaders and professors, like Professor Mark Ritson, for example. Those who are based in the UK market will probably know him really well. We had Les Binet, Ty Heath, Peter Weinberg, and Jamal Miller all contribute to this piece. So one thing I would recommend is that after the call, if you would want to find out some more information, you can download the report on our website, or we can share the link to download the report after. There's a lot of gems in there, and it goes into quite a lot of depth in terms of like how to actually begin sort of taking these strategies home and being able to implement them. But before we dive in, I think an intro's due. So my name's Will Wright, as Alex mentioned. I'm Intuit MailChimp Senior Agency Partnerships Manager, based in London. I've been part of the business for just over a year now. But before this, I was over at TikTok. I was at TikTok for about 3 years, working specifically with like mid-market and high growth brands, to onboard them onto the TikTok ads platform, and to have basically just to help them grow their business, primarily through the sort of creatives that they were pushing out. And then before that, I was on agency side. So I worked at a WPP agency called Wavemaker. And I also worked for a dynamic creative agency called Idyllic, that sit underneath the Omnicom umbrella. So I've kind of gone full circle into tech, but along with me, I've got some really good experience working with mid-market brands and sort of driving growth for them firsthand. So it's been very interesting, the journey that I've had into this role. So for those that aren't aware, so MailChimp has been around for over 2 decades. We celebrated our 23rd anniversary this year. We are one of the longest standing and most successful email marketing and SaaS companies in the world. and we're evolving quite significantly. So for those who aren't aware, we went through a 12 billion acquisition by a huge tech giant over in the US called Intuit. And now they are putting a lot of investment in terms of like the capabilities of the platform, the resources we can provide on a localized basis, and the tools that we can now use with sort of mid-market brands. That's our intention. We're wanting to focus on mid-market brands and help scale their businesses through what they're pushing out over email and how they're automating communications to build a one-to-one connection with your customer. So as mentioned, today we're going to be talking about sort of growth for medium-sized and high-growth businesses. And I think it's safe to say that brands have a huge advantage, but there's a really nice opportunity for smaller companies coming through, just because they're able to move fast, they're able to innovate quickly, and they're able to build like long-lasting one-to-one relationships with their customers. I'm personally buying a lot more products from smaller businesses, so smaller Shopify businesses that are promoting their products on like platforms like Instagram. I'm purchasing a lot more of these products because they're using their size to their advantage in order to basically navigate around the larger, less innovative and slower moving brands. So today we're going to look at some of the core principles of how mid-market brands can scale for growth. And some of the examples of companies that I think are doing a really good job with this. And Alex is going to go into some of his first-hand experience of this as well. But it really goes to speak to the fact that mid-market brands don't need a huge budget in order to make big moves. And we've created a formula for this. And this formula is around how, again, brands can use their size to their strength. And we created a growth formula. So it goes into how brands can grow by finding a balance, between their positioning, so how they can differentiate their brand and leverage niche markets to their advantage, how they can reach net new customers for long-term success, how they can engage with their customers by using like their data to create hyper-personalized customer experiences. And how they can drive efficiency with all of this by utilizing AI as well. So each of these different stages or these different things all contribute to growth, and they kind of act as a roadmap that I'm going to be taking you through in today's session. So the first section talks about growth and how brands can unlock opportunity with the small brand rules. And this is all about how brands can find a balance between things. So finding a balance between new customer acquisition with loyalty, finding a balance between price and value, and finding a balance between like short-term sales activations and brand building with that in mind. So this section came from Les Binet. He's spoken a lot about these different balancing strategies. But I think a lot of them you'll know already. But the first one speaks to the fact that businesses need to be finding new customers. Binet and Fields have a share of voice rule that suggests that in order for growth, you need to have a larger share of voice than your share of market. So your share of market is your existing customers. And while having loyal customers is fantastic, it's not going to grow your business with velocity. You need to continually be adding to this share of market by attracting net new customers in order to grow. So advertising channels and leveraging sort of paid media, also leveraging sort of organic creative strategies are all ways that you can be reaching customers. And we'll be going into more detail of how you can do this later on as well. The second rule is balancing price and volume. And Mark Ritson goes into this like in depth, and it's something he talks about a lot. And that is how brands need to be raising their prices in order to drive profitability. So brands shouldn't shy away from increasing prices. They shouldn't be scared by other brands, other big corporations discounting their pricing through like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and seasonal sales, because discounting is a thing that can erode margins and long-term success. So he's come up with a lot of like raise your pricing tactics that he suggested. So he said that like if you are at full capacity, you can start charging new customers more. So you can raise your prices each time you pitch to a new customer. You can build annual price hikes for new contracts so that they outpace inflation, and you can introduce like premium versions of your products to make your standard ones look like a steal as well. So pricing is super important. I would just say for smaller brands, like discounts and things are detrimental to your growth, and big brands can do this just because they've got more money in the bank. And the third is finding a balance between your brand and activation strategies. So as mid-market brands, like it's super easy to get fixated on immediate sales. So focusing on those conversion objectives is something a lot of mid-market brands do straight away, and that is completely fine. I've worked with loads of mid-market brands coming on board to TikTok and automatically going for the conversion objectives. But one thing you've got to keep in mind is the fact that you've got to be investing in brands, so people are actually aware of your product and what your value is in order for them to actually get the sales in. So I think the 60-40 rule is a very good rule, but I think it's a destination, right? I think it's a destination for brands to get to. Like, by all means, invest in your conversion piece first to generate ROI and prove a channel. But at the end of the day, like, you need to be having an audience pool that are simmering, because not all the time are your customers going to be in market to buy your product. But Alex, it'd be really good just to get your thoughts on this. I know obviously at Push On, this is obviously something you would be speaking with your customers day in, day out about, right?
Yeah, so I think from our side, because and all the theory behind it's brilliant. I think from our side, it's the activation bit. So like, obviously building out the brand is super important, and then ensuring that you've got like something in place to like ensure that that brand activation is turned into conversion is really key. But I guess it's like, what's that journey to get from that brand awareness right through to that conversion bit. So we know that when we speak to clients a lot, they might be doing some of the channels. So they might be doing, okay, we're doing some organic at the moment when they approach us, and they're like, is that the right thing for brand activation and brand awareness? Because we're seeing a lot of people come to the site, but we're not necessarily seeing them convert. So that's when we speak to clients and go, okay, right, so you've got that big pool of people at the top of the funnel. What channels are you then kind of converting them on? Because you might find that you're driving a lot of people to the site, and then they're eventually just not converting with you at all. And that's because you've not got something like PPC in place, or you've not got something like paid social with a conversion strategy in line with it. So I guess from our side, to align with what you're saying there, we've built out kind of like, well, built upon a strategy, which is the See, Think, Do, Care. Now, what this basically does is it looks at 4 different sections. The large addressable qualified audience, which we deem as like the C part. Then the large addressable qualified audience with some commercial intent, i.e. the largest amount of people who are kind of more warmed up to purchase. And then the large addressable qualified audience with loads of commercial intent, so people who are basically ready to buy and they've shortlisted their different options. And then the care phase, which is that loyalty piece that you're talking about. Now, in terms of if you're going to have different strategies to kind of support that activation and brand awareness bit, you might look at something like PR. It might be that you're looking at that top level paid social or top level organic social like TikTok. And then as you go a bit further down the funnel, you've got your things like affiliate, your more engagement campaigns on paid social, and then maybe PPC, which could be across search or shopping if it's going to be on the conversion bit, and then maybe additional channels, things like WhatsApp marketing, and then definitely the email piece to come in and support the whole thing from a loyalty perspective. Where this is like super important for us though is mainly around like messaging and budget. So if it is going to be a case of, okay, you need to grow your brand, it's going to be like, how much are we going to invest in that and what channel are we going to do it? So we might align it with like the See and Think part, and then it's that kind of like that 40% you're talking about, that's going to be in the loyalty bit. So that's maybe where the investment comes into something like remarketing and email. But I guess like if we're looking at it from an activation perspective on what you're speaking about there, this is the type of thing that we would probably align with it. And this is something that we've seen perform really well for clients across like multiple different industries, mid-market as well. Like it's performed really well because it helps people understand what budgets they need to sell internally to stakeholders, and then also kind of what ad spends they need to put on top of it as well.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. So moving on. So the second section is speaking specifically around positioning and how brands can mid-market brands can tap into the power of positioning to stand out against their competitors. And Mark Ritson goes into sort of two sort of theories, and these are the two small upsides, and that is the versus position and then the niche play. So the versus position talks about how brands can win by picking out their specific competitor and positioning their brand basically overtly against them to generate shadow awareness. And two brands I think that have been doing this really well recently, are two brands that I've also purchased, is a brand called Suri. So Suri have literally gone completely against Oral-B and their proposition, and created a brand that basically has picked apart the brand's weaknesses and used it to their advantages. So for example, Oral-B is known for having their toothbrushes are known for having terrible battery life. They're known to get quite dirty, and they're known to not look pretty. And Suri have basically gone against all of that, and they've created a toothbrush that has a 40-day battery life. And one of the big messages that they push is the fact that you can take your toothbrush away with you when you go traveling without your toothbrush charger. It's aesthetic, so it comes in a range of different colors that a lot of people that are maybe a bit more fashion conscious would be happy with. And the fact that the battery case itself has a UV light inside it that eliminates bacteria on the toothbrush head. So it's a very cool brand, and a really good example of how these newer brands and these smaller businesses are coming through by looking at the sort of market leaders and being like, right, what are they not doing? And how can we really sort of leverage our new brand against this? And they've done a great job. The second one is a brand called Fussy. They're a natural deodorant brand. I think they got a lot of their investment through Dragon's Den, I think. But they're a really cool brand in how they position themselves again against some of the bigger players that you'd be aware of within the sort of deodorant game. They're durable, they're refillable, they're eco-friendly, they're science-backed, and they use like natural ingredients. So there's no chemicals that are harmful to your body. And again, like Suri, like they're good to look at. Like you might not necessarily think that your roll-on deodorant needs to look good, but again, it just caters to a certain demographic and to a certain audience in a way that like Sure or any of these other deodorants just don't do. So again, a really nice example of a brand that's playing to its strengths and the weaknesses of the bigger players. The second positioning play is obviously the ability of like finding your niche and just letting it grow from there. Smaller brands have a huge advantage in being able to be laser focused on one thing that they can do really well, as opposed to big brands that need to juggle multiple SKUs, multiple different products, multiple markets, etc. Smaller brands can build a really nice foundation and essentially just build from there really for long-term success. And I think again, like two brands that I've seen who've done this really well is Huel and Surreal. I think Surreal, like more specifically, like the CPG space is dominated by really old players, and there lacks personality, there lacks value from the cereals that are on the shelves. And Surreal have come in and absolutely smashed it from a sort of like marketing perspective. I was actually at an event not too long ago with one of the creative directors at Surreal, and I found out at the end he was a stand-up comic and he did loads of gigs on the Edinburgh Fringe. And it's funny how they just brought him in to be the brand voice. And this has just completely set it apart from the other brands that are on offer at the moment. And they actually have a value of being high protein and having zero sugar. And if you compare that to the other players, it is a really good sort of value position that they've gone down for that. The third section talks about reach. So Ty Heath speaks about how you can drive obviously long-term growth with reaching net new customers and driving like memorability. So he talks about the art of memory generation. And the 65-5 rule is it kind of speaks to the 60-40 rule that we spoke to at the beginning, and it suggests that 95% of your ICP, so your ideal customer profile, aren't in market to buy your product, and that only 5% of your customers are actually in market to buy your product or buy a product from their sort of consideration set. So going back to the sort of push ons framework, it's super important to be looking at sort of targeting your prospective customers or your future customers by investing more money into these sort of upper and mid funnel tactics that sort of the paid channels offer, because you need to ensure that you're consistently like simmering your audience group in order for when they do come into the sort of 5% in market stage, your brand will be top of mind and there will be sort of intent to buy your brand ahead of others that aren't activating across the brand building piece. And I think a really key principle as part of this is like the memory generation piece. So it is essentially like using creative as your secret weapon. Brands of a smaller size have so much more of an advantage when it comes to creative than the bigger brands do. Obviously, bigger brands have more budgets for the sort of the glossy high production piece assets that you maybe typically see across TVC. But brands have the ability to create assets quickly. They have the ability to take more risk. They can test and learn more effectively. And they can be a little bit more risky with what they're doing. Like Surreal, for example, they take huge risks with some of the marketing that they push out. And it was really interesting to see how some of them aren't a success, but you can quickly learn from them, adapt from them, optimize them for future campaigns that you put out. So brands like Tala, I think, are like leaders within this space. Like their CEO, Grace, like she's built her whole brand off TikTok alone, through just creating content that is authentic to the target audience that they're going after. And I think what's so like unique about that brand is the fact that like she's documented her whole growth story publicly, and she's basically enabled her customers to come on that journey with her. And she's speaking to her customers on a one-to-one level and creating clothes within the fitness space that actually cater for the problems of her customers. So she's identified pain points and she's addressed them and she's communicated them, and that's how she's done so well with the brand, and how it's completely different to bigger brands like Lululemon and what they can feasibly do in order to tap into that sort of one-to-one, that tapping into their customers on a one-to-one level. Alex, it'd be good to get your thoughts on this. I know you guys are working with obviously working with the e-com space. It'd be great to understand the kind of things you guys are seeing.
Yeah, so I mean, one example that we've got here is a quite big beauty industry client that we've got, and it's similar to the Tala example in a way that they've seen a lot of growth on TikTok. And I think one of the key things that we're seeing is that different channels have different needs when it comes to the customer journey. So when kind of like Meta was the key player and like that's all most people were doing, it was very easy to be like, okay, let's use Facebook ads, or let's use Instagram ads and Instagram content and Facebook content to do like the awareness piece and also let it do the conversion bit. Whereas now, similar like with Tala, you're basically seeing a lot of that growth has been on TikTok, but it has been people buying into the brand on TikTok. It might not necessarily be where she does all the sales like the sales might be coming from other channels. Like it could even be coming from things like Meta ads. It can be coming from Google itself, and I'm sure like a lot of stuff through email as well. But what we're seeing with these brands that are coming up through TikTok is the awareness bit is heavily focused on TikTok, and then we're seeing quite a lot of conversion come through like your Meta ads. So that means that you might find that with this example here, that the creative needs to line up to that. So the creative that you're putting out on one channel needs to be focused on talking about the brand personality, talking about what the brand's about. And then it might be on this other channel like Meta, it might be talking about the USPs of the product. It might be talking about the price of the product because it's appealing to someone a bit further down the customer journey. Whereas, like I said, originally when we kind of were doing these types of campaigns, it was like, let's get conversion focus on Meta in terms of the creative, but then also tie that in with some very broad awareness stuff. Because there's so many different touch points now from a social media perspective, you're kind of taking them on a multi-channel journey, and therefore everything needs to align with that. From creative to copy as well is another one that we found is key. So I guess it's ensuring that you understand what the customer journey is from a social perspective is so vital now, because it's not just like one channel suits all. It is people going on a customer journey, which again might have been like Google organic to Google paid. Now it's like TikTok organic to Meta paid. So it's a bit more complicated, but I think understanding it is like so good, and it maximizes conversion rates, and like it's super engaging as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like when I was at TikTok, like I worked with one of the verticals I service was financial services, and you can only imagine the pain of trying to like get banks to tap into like content that's authentic to the TikTok platform. But they did it, they like Monzo, for example, if I'm to pick out a name, like they did a really good job at utilizing their organic strategy to test what content resonates with their target audience on the platform. So if they saw that one of their assets was performing really well, and a couple of them went viral, they would then take that asset and then they would boost it. And they would also boost it across other channels as well, because it's kind of like social proofed. They know it's going to tap, they know it's going to resonate. They know it's going to drive sort of like the levels of impressions that they need. So yeah, don't be scared to sort of try new things as part of your organic strategy, because that could be the start of your paid strategy as well from a creative standpoint.
Definitely.
So engagement, so the fourth part of the growth formula, and this speaks to like you actually utilizing your zero party data to increase engagement and just make every customer feel valued along that journey. So the section speaks to cookies and how we're kind of saying goodbye to cookies, but not really, because Google pulled those plans back. How there's a need for personalization with today's consumers, and how brands can begin connecting those dots. So with cookies, with zero party data, it is the future. We are slowly saying goodbye to cookies. It was shocking, in my opinion, that Google pulled all those plans back, considering how much work the industry has done. But I think it speaks to the fact that customers and consumers are becoming a lot more sophisticated when it comes to like their privacy and what data they actually want to share with brands and with advertisers. And the beauty about the zero party data piece is the fact that this is data that your customers are willingly giving to you. So like their preferences, their interests, and their needs. This is data that they've opted in to share with you. So brands can really utilize this in order to create those personalized one-to-one experiences and create those personalized campaigns that actually resonate with you on a one-to-one level. So customers want personalized experiences. I mentioned that previously. So 87% of US and UK consumers said that they are likely to open and read an email if the content is personalized to them. And this is what gives like zero party data its edge. As I mentioned before, it allows you to personalize your marketing in a way that actually feels authentic. So going back to like the TikTok point, like people want to be spoken to in a native and in an authentic way, and in a way that's not creepy and invasive, right? And if you do this right, you will obviously keep your audience engaged. You will build trust with your audience as well. And then in line with that, you'll then drive lifetime value of your customers. And the best brands aren't just collecting data, they're using it to craft highly relevant experiences that are keeping their customers back, keep their customers coming back. And this is through like personalized offers, recommendations, like content, like if they have their ESP integrated into their Shopify store, for example, they can create automations that are completely bespoke to that person's behavior on site and for where they are in that sort of purchase journey. But it's important for brands to have fun and use fun and engaging ways to grow their lists and collect that opt-in data. So there's like multiple different ways you can do it, but you can use quizzes, polls, surveys, but all these things are like act as a gold mine for customer insights. It's also really important to like sort of give your customers a bit more control over the data that they're offering. For example, like so many brands that I see have just one selection of their customers or prospective customers opting in for all marketing communications. The brands that are doing email marketing really well are the brands that are giving their customers choice in the preferences that they would like to receive, or marketing communications that they would like to receive. So, for example, if a fashion brand, if a person bought from a fashion brand, like there could be a preference where they will only receive marketing communications around like the new autumnal and winter lines that they're releasing. And by doing that, you're going to, again, build that trust. You're going to get more people opted in. There's going to be a higher level of engagement, and just in all honesty, it's just better marketing if you do that and tailor the messages. And all of this is in line with sort of creating superior customer profiles and the ability to then personalize product and marketing experiences in relation to the profiles that you're building through these data points that are coming through. But Alex, there's a holding slide here for discussion. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on how you guys are leveraging sort of zero-party data, first-party data.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I think like the key thing for us going into Q4 has been getting as much data as possible, because we know we basically know how informed our campaigns need to be from a paid perspective, considering how competitive the market is. So obviously, like previous years, we've been able to kind of get data a lot more easily, and that has meant that our campaign performance has been really strong. Going into kind of this Q4, we've got less data, which means things like our automated campaigns around like Performance Max, or even like the campaigns that we're running on social media, they're potentially losing a bit of a competitive advantage against some of the bigger players that might have like bigger email lists or just generally bigger customer lists that they can leverage for optimization. So a lot of things that we've done with clients on the lead up to Q4 has been to drive lead gen campaigns, so that we can basically take that data, and when we go into a period of time where we're going to uplift our spend on a lot of our campaigns, we're able to do that in a more informed way. We've got some clients that, like I said, will run competitions, and then we've got other clients that will run campaigns that will be doing like pre-Black Friday signups and things like that. And that just means that we've kind of got that customer data that we can use. The other thing that we've kind of found that the benefit of taking that data has been to involve it with our PMAX campaigns for new customer prospecting. So one of the things that we've obviously found with PMAX over the last few years has been like the heavy focus it has on brand, and now we can obviously exclude brand from some of those campaigns, but then we find that the performance of them will often not kind of get to the levels that we need it to. So one of the things that we can do is we can use like some of the settings within a Performance Max campaign to basically get it to bid towards new customer acquisition. Now, the only way you can do that is if you're informing the campaign of what a new customer actually looks like. So by putting in in place like your current customer lists, it allows it to kind of bid more efficiently and bid towards people that are not necessarily informed of your brand, without having to like completely remove all brand activity from it. So again, building up like high base of sales on the lead up to periods like this, or peak periods, has allowed us to go into these kind of like spend uplift periods by targeting new customers, and it's been really vital to do that. And kind of generally during this period of time, being able to kind of focus on your current customer base but not spending aggressively on it is key. Because those customers are likely to come back anyway, because they know that you're going into peak and they know that you're probably going to have a promotion on. It's tapping into the kind of new users, which is going to be the big wins, and doing that efficiently is done by leveraging that first party data.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like the amount of new data that will be coming through in this Q4 period, like there's an opportunity, and there's a Q5 period as well, where it's like what was it, over the January period, isn't it?
Well, so we normally kind of class it like just after Christmas, and then kind of maybe slightly just after New Year. But that kind of weird period of time where everyone's kind of like not knowing what life really is after Christmas, just before the New Year.
Yeah. And everyone's shopping. Everyone's on their phones, probably researching new products they can buy. And I think the amount of new data that gets sort of pulled in through like the Black Friday periods, I think you spoke to that. There's a really nice opportunity to be like utilizing that new first party data that's coming through, and like building campaigns around these new customers that are coming in to really nurture them. So a big opportunity for that Q5 period, but then also going into the sort of quieter months of January, February. Hopefully your brands will have a lot more new data points to build their campaigns around and begin personalizing communications to. So yeah, it's super interesting. I think a brand that I've also bought from as well, this is basically just going through my shopping list of all the different brands that I'm buying from, but is a supplement brand called Heights. I don't know if you've heard of them, but I bought their product at the beginning of this week, and I've not yet received it in the post, but each day they're drip feeding me email marketing content. And it's not in relation to like referring your friends and get 20% off your next order. It's all about actually like how to actually use the product and the benefits I'll likely be able to see after like a 3-4 week period. So it's in exchange for me giving my data, they're offering significant value in that sort of like lead up to me to actually receiving the product. So like teaching me how to use the product and things like that is super valuable, I think, for like increasing engagement, and it's like just good marketing. So I think that's an example of a brand that's actually really utilizing their first party data well. Because in all honesty, a lot of the big brands that we see today just go in on just discount messaging. After discount messaging, it seems like a constant DFS sale where there's a constant 20% off CTA. And I think with smaller brands, they should think outside of that box and obviously just try not to discount too much, because as I said before, it's going to affect your profits at the end of the day. Cool. Moving on to the last section, and this section is about efficiency through AI. And I know AI is spoken at any event that you'll go to these days. It is like a bit of a buzzword bingo. But I think there's such a good opportunity for smaller brands to be utilizing AI. And this is just because typically with the bigger players, the bigger enterprise businesses, there's a lot more red tape when it comes to using newer technologies. There's procurement teams that you need to get through. There's compliance, there's legal. And typically, like the bigger businesses aren't utilizing some of the newer technologies like ChatGPT, for example, when creating new strategies, crafting new creative and optimizing their media. So with smaller brands, obviously, typically this isn't the case. They can onboard new technology, they can add it to their tech stacks, and away they go. So this is one thing that I think is super valuable, and is something that a lot of brands should be really thinking about adopting into their strategies, because it will effectively save you a lot of time, and it will mean that your workflows will hopefully become a lot more efficient. as you've learned the new platforms and the newer ways of working. So these are all stats that I think everyone kind of knows about already. But it's really important that if you don't know about them, you need to be aware of them, because as I mentioned before, with smaller businesses, there is an opportunity for them to generate scale from the activity that they're doing. Bigger businesses will automatically have bigger marketing teams. Smaller businesses will mean they'll have less people within the brand to run the marketing communication piece. So AI can be their superpower in sort of generating that scale through these processes, whether that's through like marketing automation, as we mentioned before, like optimizing campaigns, or whether it's through generating creative or coming up with strategy recommendations. Like AI can really do it all. But one of the things I would recommend is just testing it for one use case and then sort of building it out from there. So for example, like 30% of people saw a boost in ROI when their companies utilize AI as part of their strategy. 50% of respondents said that they saw time saving when using marketing related AI tools, and there was 90% cost saving for marketers commissioning AI for like customer research, for example. So there are so many different use cases for the different sort of technology that's coming through at the moment. An AI-powered creative is a really interesting subject. Some people, I can imagine, will be absolutely terrified about it. There's like so many like different assets that are coming through now that are, in all honesty, quite scary. But I think the technology is still warming up. And interestingly, as part of the report, 71% of B2B ads are expected to generate 0% growth. And I think that is a huge and quite scary stat, in all honesty, because the amount of manpower and resource and time and effort and money that is going into creating those assets is a lot. And for them not to perform, that's a net loss for any business. So there's an opportunity to sort of leverage AI as part of this process. If it's part of just formulating the creative strategy, that's great. If it's utilizing AI to actually build assets for you, that's a completely different thing as well. I went to an event in summer, and one of their key verticals that they're building out as part of their creative team is like utilizing AI generated campaigns. And honestly, some of the videos that they were sharing were unbelievable. They really had like a production quality to them. So I think it's a really interesting space to watch, especially for the smaller businesses in the game. With that, there is multiple different ways that AI can obviously make your life just a lot more efficient. Like, it helps you segment your audiences. It allows you to research audiences and optimize in real time, and just ensures that you get the most out of every pound you spend. With AI as well, like if you were to tailor it to like email, for example, like you can segment buyers, so much so that you can segment them to like the ones that are providing your business the most profit, and then you can build campaigns around that. So the AI powered customer research tool to sort of pick out these key clusters of audiences to build campaigns around is second to none. And they also allow you to like measure effectively and be able to optimize your campaigns effectively as well. I mean, I wish it was something that I had when I was on agency side, because obviously going through Excel spreadsheets and manually putting out insights is effort, and it takes a lot of time and resource to do. So again, it just adds to that level of efficiency. But I know, Alex, you've got another example of how you guys are doing this, right?
Yeah, so this is for a client that we have called Medline, and I get for these guys we do a lot of technical and content. So one of the things that we wanted to do was kind of do a big test that allowed us to see what the potential impact we could do from rolling out quite a lot of AI category copy. So what we basically did with these guys is we kind of created two core prompts to understand whether the existing content needed refreshing, and if there was a need to kind of build out new content. And then on top of that, we then created new content off the back of it. So what we've done over the last the last year is kind of focus a lot on our prompts, and the uses for that. So understanding what exactly the type of things that we need to be telling AI in order to give us the best output. And for these guys, our big thing was that we wanted to do something at scale. So it wasn't a case of like we didn't necessarily have the resource internally to do it. It was just the sheer volume of the actual copy that needed to be done, and also the fact that it needed to be delivered on quite a tight, quite tight deadline. So yeah, it's a case of like putting in a prompt that allowed it to kind of take inspiration from the current content, also ensuring that the correct keywords were put in there and ensuring that it was SEO friendly. And then it was a case of ensuring, because there's some medical stuff in there as well, so ensuring that it was obviously compliant. That was a key one for us as well. So it was almost like the quite heavy duty work from a human perspective was done around the compliance stuff. And if you think about how much time that can go into that, on top of pulling the content together, it can be a huge task, like you said, like agency side, when you've kind of got to do these big tasks and then you've got the things that you've got to work on for that same client. This allowed us to basically do quite a few things at once. And for this client in particular, it's a big one. So they've got a big site, and have got a lot of content that needs to be written. So this allowed us to do that for those guys. And it's something that we kind of looking at rolling out at scale on quite a few different accounts as well. And I think that we have seen quite nice uplift on quite a few different projects where we've implemented strategies like this. Not only from the fact that we've generated content which is strong, but also from the fact that it's allowed us to do other things, which has allowed for further uplifts with other strategies.
Great stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's so much coming through at the moment, but I think it's something that I hear about like time and time again. Like everyone is speaking about this subject, but it's one of those where like this is rolling out so quickly now. Like my one bit of advice is to like really grab the bull by its horns and just understand the basics and the foundations of like being able to utilize the technology, like especially prompts as well that you mentioned, because it's only going to advance quicker, and brands will automatically just become more sophisticated with the type of technologies that are coming through, especially the bigger brands as well. Once they figure out how to sort of get it through all the different teams, like they will also be utilizing this technology. So it's good to sort of get ahead while you can. Great stuff. So yeah, just some key takeaways. There's been a lot of information has been shared throughout this. So as I mentioned, like this is the roadmap for growth. Again, it's the positioning, the reach, the engagement, and the efficiency. What I recommend, as I mentioned at the start, is just download the report and just take each of these sections like one at a time, because they go into a lot. It goes into a lot more depth for how you can tactically like implement this. And you can get a lot out of it. There's a lot of gems within that. But to take these one by one, so growth, just focus on acquiring new customers to build that momentum. Increase your pricing is the best way to increase your profitability. Find that nice balance between your brand and activation, as we mentioned, the 60-40 rule. If it's more sort of heavily weighted towards the sort of activation piece at the beginning, that's fine, but you just need to ensure that you are focusing on that sort of 95% of customers that aren't currently in market. With your positioning, again, like play to your unique strengths, position yourself against bigger competitors. If there are any specific like values that your brand has that your customers don't have, like build a campaign around it, like add that to your messaging, add that to your copy, and target niche customers or niche markets that are too small for the big players to focus on. With reach, again, instead of only chasing the 5% of in-market buyers, be sure to focus on the 95% of customers who won't buy from you today, and leverage your creative strategy. Like build an organic strategy and build creatives that are memorable, like take Tala, for example, take Monzo as another example. Just have a look at their creative strategy and like be able and like leverage some of the things that they're doing to build memorability. Engagement. So again, looking at like how you can personalize, how you can really take advantage and capitalize on the zero-party data that's coming through. A lot of brands aren't doing this effectively, and it really does show when a good brand is doing it well, like Heights, for example. And then efficiency. Again, utilizing AI to make your smaller business more efficient is super important. Take the bull by its horns, as I said, like utilize a new technology before your competitors do, and see how you can begin applying this to your business. But yeah, thank you very much. Again, a lot of info shared. We'll share the report. I think we'll share the link to download the report as well after the call. But if you've got any questions, obviously, about MailChimp or how you can sort of begin implementing some of these strategies across your email marketing and automation, just let me know. I'm more than happy to jump on a call and to take you through that. But thank you very much.
Cheers, well. So we've just got two questions, I think. One is actually about email. So Alice asks, I have clients who get overwhelmed with all the possibilities when it comes to segmentation in order to personalize email. How deep do you go as a bare minimum when it comes to creating new segments based on actions and interests for subscribers?
Yeah, and you know what? It's a really good question. I think the beauty about email platforms is that there's so many different like use cases and how a brand or a company can utilize it. I always say just start easy, start basic, and get a real understanding of like the types of objectives that you want to set out when building your email marketing campaigns. Like there can be certain strategies that again focus on that sort of brand building activity or that will nurture customers. Then there'll also be the activity that will be focused on that 5% of in-market customers where you're wanting to drive sales from. So your segments will differ based on the objectives that you push out. But one thing that I would definitely recommend is if you go onto MailChimp, there are pre-built templates ready and waiting for you that basically cover off all the sort of foundationary like segments that you could be building. So I would recommend starting there to begin with, and then building segments around like the customers who are engaging and the customers who are sort of likely to purchase. But I would say is like, yeah, you utilize the platform that you're using. If your platform isn't offering that or offering resources, like it might be worth looking at other platforms that can do a better job at sort of recommending those for you.
Cool. And then just one on the reference to the art of memory generation, which is that in the deck? We can put
yeah. So that's in the report as well. I'm trying to figure out who.
We'll basically we've got this recorded as well, and then we'll share the slides. So any reference to like people and things like that will all be included in there. But yeah, I just thank you everyone for joining. It's been good. Really appreciate that, Will, as well, taking the time out of your day. And if anyone wants to follow up, my name's Alex Hogan. I'm the marketing director at Push On. If there's anything you want to follow up myself, you can get us via the website or via my email, alex.hogan@pushon.co.uk, and then we'll put all of Will's details out there as well. But yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Great stuff. Thanks,
Cheers.
everyone. Cheers.